Possibly Alan Bloom, possibly Robert Burke.
I'm here.
Oh, there you go.
Hi.
But I don't know why you can't see a video here.
In the bottom of your screen, there should be a little
Video.
icon that looks like a camera, and you can hit it, and it should go on or off.
There you go.
Okay. Whee.
Oh, hi, Robert. Caro, that is. Right. Robert Carroll. Hi. Robert Burke, hi to you, too.
It's Robert C. and Robert B.
There we go.
Okay.
Okay, let's begin. I think Zoom gives us 40 minutes, but we'll start, and then if we get cut off, link back in, and we'll start again. Okay, so the chosen topic is, put your phones on mute, please. So it's easier. Okay, so its chosen topic is pathways of the soul, understanding the 7 emotions, the 7 Middos. So by way of introduction, first of all, as follows. The Gemara tells us very famously, Midah keneged Midah, that God's measure is measure for measure. And the idea is basically the way in which we behave is the way in which we are treated. It's a very classic theological idea. Now, Kabbalah and Chassidus takes this to a different level. And Kabbalah and Chassidus explains that, in the words of the Alter Rebbe in chapter 3 of Tanya, it's nishtal shelo behen, which means to say as follows. Everything that exists in this world is on the bottom of a spiritual chain of divine energy that starts in a higher, more spiritual world. So it starts off with the infinite truth as divine, which is at the top of this chain, as it were. And from there, even though God himself is essentially beyond the whole chain, but the chain starts at one point, and then there's a chain of divine energy that slowly flows, and in each realm that it flows, in each rung of this chain, it gets slowly diminished till it makes it into this world. So the way you can imagine it is like a literal chain. If you pull at the bottom of the chain, the top of the chain gets tugged. You pull at the top of the chain, and the bottom of the chain gets tugged too. So it's not merely measure for measure in that, God's watching with his folded arms, as it were. What are these guys doing? And then punitively, as it were, responding and according to how we're behaving, but rather it's to be viewed as a chain, in that when we behave in a certain way, we're pulling at the chain in a certain direction, which causes a chain reaction at the top of the chain, in which the divine flow of energy comes down in that way. And likewise, the reverse. The divine energy itself can manifest in a certain way, and that will have its effect on the way in which we live and experience life here in this world. And the truth is, this is reflected in the Gemara as well. The Gemara tells us, "Ein loch esev lamata, she'ein lo mazel l'mayla ha'imur like a dale." There is no blade of grass down here in this world that does not have a corresponding mazel that tells it grow. Now, mazel is often translated as luck, but a better translation for the word mazel comes from the word nozel, which means to flow, which means to say, there is no blade of grass down here that doesn't have a mazel, doesn't have a flow of divine energy that tells it to grow. So it's not, in other words, there's a flow of divine energy that comes from the top of this divine chain with divine energy. It slowly diminishes as it finally makes it into this world. All to say that this world is built in parallel to all of the universes that are stacked above it in this chain. And then when we behave in a certain way, we're pulling at the chain in that direction, causing the flow of energy to come into this world in that way. And likewise, if an angel, or if God were to send an angel, or if God himself were to pull at the chain, at the top of the chain in a certain direct way, it would cause us to stir a certain way. So to give you a story in the Gemara which illustrates this point, the Gemara tells us that the Pasuk reads that Daniel, Hanani, Mishael, and Azariah were walking, and Daniel saw a vision, but the other 3 didn't see a vision, but they felt a tremor. And the Gemara asks, if they didn't see, why did they feel a tremor? And the Gemara explains, even though they didn't see, mazlayu chazi, their mazel, their corresponding divine energy at a higher point in the chain, saw this vision, and therefore there was a shake, causing them in this world to tremor. They weren't aware of why, but because their life force is at the bottom of a divine chain, so when in the top there is a shaking, it shakes at the bottom as well, and therefore they experience the shake. So this uses this idea to explain why randomly, so to speak, at least from our experience, a Jew might feel an awakening to want to get better, to do teshuvah, out of nowhere, not because he prepared for it or anything like that. And why does he all of a sudden feel that? And Chassidus explains that we feel that because our neshama, our soul, the source of our soul, up in higher rung of the chain, is seeing something or feeling something that's causing us to shake. Now, the reason why I'm telling you this is to explain and put in context where it is we say that by analyzing our emotions, that will help us understand the divine Sefirot, the divine manifestations, because they're created in parallel. By analyzing, this is the true deeper meaning of the verse when we say that B'Tselem Elokim Asa Adam, that God created man in his image. Or this idea that the verse said, from my flesh I see God. It's not just a parable of two separate entities in which you analyze the person and you get an idea for how God works. That is true, but it's more correctly said that man is a scaled down miniature version of the divine system. We're created in God's image. So by understanding both our physical image, actually in Kabbalah, it stacks the physical with the psychological, the soulful, and then all the way back up to Tatzilus, the divine system itself. Because in essence, we are a diminutive version in which is invested, the same system of divine is invested in us. Excuse me. So having said that, the creative force of divine energy is divided into 7 days of the week. Shivas Yemei HaBinyan, the 7 days of, or 6 days of the week, and then Shabbos. 7 days, each day representing another creative force of the divine system. Now this creative force and divine system, in their diminutive version of the human experience, is our emotions. So just to understand why that is, why is it the creative force is seen as emotion? And this will put into context where we are. In the same way, everything I experience, or everything, let's just do something I do. Everything I do starts off with an idea. It starts off in the mind. But the way in which I perceive that idea in my mind is, it's reclusive, it's analytical, and it's only about, Yanko, if you don't mind putting it on mute, please. Oh, there we go, I can do it. The idea that's in the mind is reclusive, it's within me, and has no relationship, theoretically, to anybody outside of me. It's only when that idea becomes, hey, this is a good idea to do, once I've already done all the analytics, once I've understood the project, and I've come to the conclusion that the project is a worthy investment, now we've gotten to the point of I'm willing to move outside of me. That's what emotions are. This is where emotions come in. This is where Middos come in. So whereas the intellect, specifically we were talking about the Sefirot, we're referring to Chachma bin Adas, the intellectual Sefirot. Those are internal. They're me having a conversation with myself about what is theoretically good and what is theoretically not good. The emotions come and say, this is the right direction to go. Now I'm ready, I'm moving in some direction. Is that clear so far? Now, generally speaking, when we talk about emotions, there are actually 4 stages. If we talk about the 7 emotions. There are 4 stages, and the pattern kind of repeats itself each time. The first is what Kabbalah calls moyach hadas, the mind of das. Without, our subject is not the intellect, so we're going to keep away from that for a moment. But the last stage in any intellectual process of analysis is, this is the right way to behave. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that I actually will go and behave that way, or I might do anything. It's just a conclusion. It's a conclusion. So this is what, through this terms, the emotions as they are pregnant in the mind. In other words, the mind conceives of an idea, develops it, and then it comes to the conclusion, this is the way we ought to behave. Whether it be, if you're a judge, let's say, and the ruling is kosher, not kosher, or this person ought to be held accountable, and this person ought to go scot-free. But either way, whichever way it is, it's an intellectual conclusion. This is what Kabbalah terms moyach hadas, the mind of das. Just for those who know a little bit more, this is why tefillin has 4 compartments. The tefillin has 4 compartments because it's chachma bina, the first 2 faculties of the mind, and then das, the third faculty of mind, is divided into 2 conclusions on 2 emotional sides, which leads us to stage 2. In stage 1, it's the conclusion is in the mind. And the second stage is now I already start to experience and feel that conclusion. The feeling of that conclusion is in one of 2 directions or a combination of both. Namely, I'm either attracted to that thing or I am moving away from that thing. In Kabbalah, this is the right side and the left side of, if you've ever seen those like maps of the Kabbalistic Sefirot, they're like made in 3 lines. So this is the right side and the left side. The right side being the side of chesed, the side of giving, the side of attraction. I want to go towards that, versus the side of gevura, the side of strength, which is retreat, no, take away. And every emotion that we're going to analyze is either one of these 2 things or a combination thereof. Something between giving and attraction, moving outward, or retreat, retreating inward in fear is classic. Love and fear. Love is attraction towards something. Fear is reclusive. So let's now look at, now that we're in stage 2, we've come to the conclusion in our mind that this is the right thing to go toward, or we come to the conclusion in our mind, this is the right thing to run away from. Now we go to the feelings of fear or love, attraction versus reclusiveness. Let's analyze these things for a moment. The first thing is, another kind of introduction is to understand that in our reality, known as Olam HaTikkun, or the world of Kabbalah, there are none of these emotions in their pure form. They're always integrated. What Hasidic terms hiskalulos, they're always integrated. It's very rare that a person has solely a chesed experience or solely a gvura experience, if it exists at all. It's always going to be a combination of the 2 in some form. And to explain why. Chesed is giving. Gevura, strength, judgment, discipline, is about withholding. Chesed in its purest form is not something we can possibly conceive of. So to give a simple example of rain falling. If rain were to come down from the heavens in a purely chesed form, it would be a massive flood. It would be in one go, this huge, infinite-sized bucket of water would just drop on our heads. In order for the rain to be experienced and enjoyed, it has to have gvura as well, in which the rain is being held back so that it only comes down in tiny little droplets. So chesed is often translated as kindness, and gvura is often translated as severity, but the reason why they fall short sometimes is because you would think of this in the sense that chesed's kindness, it's good, gvura's severity, it's bad. But it's not always the case. If it's actually never the case, especially when you're talking about divine spheres, divine emotions, there are no bad. It's a question of giving versus withholding. And there always has to be a combination of both. If it's too much giving, we're overwhelmed. And if it's too much receiving, if it's too much retreating, we get nothing. We can think of this in 2 different ways a person gives charity. 2 people, both of whom are very charitable, but they give charity in 2 very different ways. One gives charity on the chesed side, and one gives charity on the gevura side. The person who gives charity on the chesed side has a $180 check for every single person who walks into his office. Doesn't ask what the story is, doesn't ask what you're collecting for, doesn't ask why you need the money. You walk into his office, he gives you $180. So this is a very giving person. But even for him, there's a gvura, there's a limit. It's 180, not 181. But generally speaking, it's a chesed. He's giving 180. Anybody who comes in doesn't ask questions. Now, the gvura guy is also giving. But the difference is, every time someone walks into his office and asks for money, he begins by saying, how much do you need? Why do you need it? Let me see your accounting. And the person will come and show him, I have this mortgage, that bill, this is what I make, this is why I'm in need of money. And then the person writes out a check exactly to the amount that the person needs. So there are times when the gvura person will be giving more than the chesed person, because the chesed person didn't ask who's receiving. Person walks in his office, gives 180, 180, 180. Now the other person who is the gvura giver, he's giving in the sense that he's asking you, he's doing it with a sense of discipline, with a sense of strictness. He's withholding. Tell me what you deserve and I'll give it to you. So sometimes the person needs more than 180 and he'll give more than 180. And sometimes he decides the person needs $10 and sometimes he decides the person needs nothing. But I'm just giving the illustration here that both chesed and gevura are both good and both giving, but with in different types and different manners. Chesed doesn't ask, he just gives. That's its nature. Gevura, it gives, but it's with discipline. It withholds. So using the rain model, chesed is the fact that the rain comes down. Gvura is the fact that it doesn't come down in buckets, it comes down in droplets so that we can actually deal with it. Bianca, I see you raised your hand. You walked away. There's something you wanted to ask? Yankel, you can unmute yourself if you want to ask a question.
Not at all.
No? Okay. So then the question becomes, what's racham? Yes.
You know, the chesed was very easy. It was love. It was love. Yeah. It was giving. With gevura, there's so many different explanations of it: fear, strength, discipline, measured amount. Like they all don't seem to be exactly the same.
Okay, so the question is, what's the common denominator between fear, restraint, discipline, all that? Is that what you're asking? What's the common denominator between all the things? Yeah. Okay. So the answer to that is, it's a good question. The answer to that is that the common denominator between all of these things is that all of them are all a retreat. When I'm fearful of something, I retreat away from that thing. In discipline, I put a measure, I put a limit, and I say, here's where I stop. I don't go past this point. And judgment says, what do you deserve? You deserve no more than this. All of those feelings, all those experiences are all retreats into the person. The person who's giving is withholding giving. He's retreating in fear. He's holding back, not giving too much because it's too much. He finishes his class exactly on time because he's very disciplined. It's all about withholding. Is that clear? Sorry, got to unmute you.
It's clear. It's clear.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so now we get.
It's clear, Rabbi.
Thank you. Okay, so now we get to what do these things mean in terms of our service and relationship with Hashem. So, having understood that both chesed and gevura are both, they both give. It's just a question of in what type. So the love of Hashem that's expressed in the chesed model it's somewhat uncalculated, and it's much more like God is just amazing and I just want to run to it. That's the nature of this love. Gevura, on the other hand, because it comes from a measure of discipline, withholding, so first of all, there's an element of fear. There's an element of awe. This is something that I approach in trepidation. Because I don't want to overdo it because maybe it's not a good idea. Maybe it's no good. He's withholding. He's holding back. There's a sense of fear. So there could be a love in gevura. For example, there's a love expressed in gevura. It's often explained in Chassidus where the person considers how distant he is from God and comes to the point that the world in which they are in is so terrible, so terribly distant that they're running away from it in this like haste to wanting to go towards God. This is what the Chassidus calls a love of a burning fire. Rav Kavish Be'esh, the love of a burning fire, which only burns by literally consuming fuel. By breaking down wood, does it burn? By breaking down the reality of my life and that it's distant, it burns and gets me going that I should want to get a little closer. That's the gevura type love. Even though it has fear, it's primarily a fear actually because of fear of what my situation is doing to me, as it were. And therefore there's a desire to want to get closer. Whereas the chesed model of wanting to get closer is, this is just amazing, and I just want to dive right into this godly experience because of how amazing it is. There's a difference between chesed and gvura in our relationship with Hashem. Now we get to the third emotion, the central line. So the chesed, the right side is the giving side, the left side is the withholding side. Love, fear, giving, restraint, unchecked benevolence, and discipline and judgment, and saying you deserve or you don't deserve. Now, where's rachamim? Where's the middle one, the middle line, or tiferes as it's known? Tiferes literally translates as beauty, and I'll get to in a moment why we're calling this emotion beauty, but let's, for now, call it rachamim, pity. By the way, these words come from the verse. L'cha Hashem hagdula v'hagvura v'tiferes v'hanetzach v'ha'od. L'cha Hashem hagdula, greatness, that's chesed, greatness because it gives. Hagdula v'hagvura, strength. V'tiferes, beauty, which is what we're talking about now. And then netzach, ha'od, kikoil, that's yesod. And then l'cha Hashem ha'mamlacha, malchus. It's reflected in this verse. So let's, for now, use the word rachamim, compassion or pity. What's the difference between compassion versus kindness? The difference between rachamim and chesed, let's use the example we gave earlier about giving charity. So you have two people giving charity in their offices. One guy doesn't ask questions, and whoever comes in, he has a $180 check, chesed. The other guy is gevura. Every person who comes into his office, he wants to know how much you need, why you need it, and when do you need it, and he'll give you the exact amount that you require. Rachamim, compassion, is neither of those two. Because what the chesed lacked was feeling the other person. Chesed was all about, or chesed is all about me expressing my generous nature. And therefore, the recipient is almost inconsequential. Just give. Gvura was the extreme other end. It was all about the recipient. And don't give the recipient one penny more than it actually needs. Compassion is a combination of both. Compassion says, tell me your story. Why are you like this? Why are you here with your hat in your hand? And if the story is moving enough, I'll give you. And I might even give you more than you need. So it has the element of gevura in that it considers the person, the recipient, and it also has a sense of chesed because it might give more than you actually deserve. So whereas chesed doesn't ask for anything, here's the money. Gevura says, tell me why and how much you need. Rachamim says, tell me about yourself. Where did you grow up? What are the circumstances of your life? He's not asking for a checkbook. He's not asking for a spreadsheet on how much you're earning and how much you're making. He's asking for your story. Tell me about you. So rachamim, the central line, is where the emotions now become not about how I feel, but about the other person. This is where the beginning of empathy comes. It's mercy. It's not about the fact that I like to give, and if I don't ask questions, just give. And it's not even about the fact that I want to be fair, like Gevura says. Rachamim is, who is the other person in front of me? Compassion. Think of the person rather than their specific needs one way or the other. And that's why it's a blend of both chesed and gevura. It gives, but it also holds back. It doesn't just give without asking. It asks first. And it might give more than necessary in the chesed side, but still asks for a story like a gevura type thing. And this is why rachamim, compassion, is called tiferes. Tiferes, which means beauty, explains Chassidus and Kabbalah that beauty is specifically with the blend of two colors. If you have a painting that's just one color, maybe in modern art that's not the case, but ordinarily beauty in art is specifically in the blend of colors. And properly blending colors together, that's what makes something beautiful. So likewise here, compassion is this perfect beauty between chesed and gevura. I'm giving, even if the person doesn't deserve, but not completely ignoring the person who's receiving, really connecting to the person himself, combining both chesed and gevura. And that's what's called tiferes, beauty. Now, in terms of our relationship to Hashem, whereas the love of chesed was, God is amazing, I just want to run to it. Gevura, the reaction was, this is too awesome and powerful, I'm approaching with trepidation. my life is not good and I need to get away from this to slowly get closer to God in a very measured way. That's the Gevurah relationship. Rachamim is not unlike Chesed, which says, God makes me feel amazing and therefore I want to run to it. Tiferes says, look at the beauty of God. So it has a combination of fear, in which you're standing back and observing, but it has the element of chesed, of kindness, in which what you're observing is something attractive, something beautiful. As opposed to the Gevurah who's running away from his negative situation, the rachamim, the compassion, is wanting to get closer to God. But unlike chesed, which just dives headfirst into a relationship, the Tiferes, the relationship with God and Tiferes, is such that a person observes the beauty and grandeur of Hashem and says, wow, this is something beyond me and so amazing. So there's a combination of both awe and love, reverence and attraction at the same time. So there you have the three sides of Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferes. Love, fear, compassion, or splendor, beauty. Now, the next three of the six emotions are stage 3 in the way in which the emotions evolve. The first we cited was das, Moyach hadas, in which the mind comes to the conclusion either give or withhold. That's the way the emotions are pregnant in the mind. Then the emotions come out into an actual feeling. I feel a sense of attraction. Chesed, I feel a sense of retreat. Fear, or I feel connected to the thing itself. I see its beauty. That's the rachamim, the compassion, the three lines in the actual emotion. Now, all of these three in stage 2 are all my feelings. So they're my experience of that thing, whatever it is we're talking about. The next three, netzach, hod, yesod, are really all the same thing as the previous three, but this time I'm feeling it about the object towards which I have that feeling. So if we go through the process, let's just use love as an example. So in moyach hadas, in the mind, I come to the conclusion, this is worthy of my attraction. So from there it goes to the right side, chesed, I feel an intense feeling of, I love that thing. The next stage in the emotion is, I am driven now to move toward it. So the next three, netzach, hod, yesod, are really the same thing. Netzach is like chesed, hod like gvura, yesod like tiferes, but whereas the first time around, it was my experience of that thing, and the next time around, it is my my movement, and not my experience of it, but my movement toward it or away from it, depending on what kind of reaction it's going to be. Now, finally, we get to Malchus. Malchus is the 7th of the Sefirot. I just want one more word there. So on the right side, under Chesed, you have Netzach. Chesed motivates Netzach, right? So Chesed is giving, just my feelings just want to give and give and give. And Netzach is often translated as endurance, because I feel forgiving, therefore translates into I push forward and forward and forward and forward, endurance, Netzach. And Gvura, the feelings of retreat, discipline, come down to Hod, which is splendor. It's a sense of standoffishness, and Hod, not splendor. Hod is, I'm not lacking translation, but Hod is a kind of standoffish, retreat, repose type of experience. And then Yesod is empathetic, where compassion goes to empathy, where you feel the other person. And finally, we get to Malchus. Malchus, the 7th of the Sefirot. Malchus literally means sovereignty or kingship. It's hard to translate it exactly, but I think the best way to think of it is my capacity to manifest. So let's use the term that the Kabbalah gives it, Malchus, kingship. What does it mean to be sovereign? When I say that this person is a king, it tells you nothing about what kind of person he is. A king could be a mean king, could be a kind king, could be a wise king, could be a stupid king. The only thing you know about this person when I say that he's a king is that this person manifests his power over others. That's all you know about this thing. which is interesting because that means that kingship, sovereignty of in and of itself, has no character. On the other hand, no character can have expression without kingship, without sovereignty, without my ability to project that which I am feeling. My feelings remain bottled up. So Malchus is manifest, or my ability to project. So once I've gone through the process of feeling love, now I can project and say the words, I love you, which is why Malchus is often referred to as speech. Speech as talking. We say, B'dvar Melech Shultan, the king rules with speech, and God's creative force, Malchus, God's kingship over the world, is his speech. He creates through speech, in that the creative force is projected into reality. That's the Malchus. So if we use that as the model of creation. So Chesed is needed for creation, because without Chesed, there's no giving. Gevura is needed for creation, because without Gevura, there's too much giving and we're overwhelmed. So we have to have a combination of both, which results in the third, Rachamim, the compassion, results of giving and withholding. That then translates into the next one, Netzach Yesod, which is the emotions as they are related to the outside. And then finally, through Malchus, through projection, it actually manifests into reality. In the same way that once I've come to the conclusion that loving this thing is a good idea, I feel the love. Hopefully it's measured and tempered by some word. I don't overwhelm the other person and smother them with love. It comes to a kind of compassionate mixture in the middle. Then those feelings go down into where I'm not just know more about my own experience, but about how I feel towards the other person, and then actually project. And in those words I say, expressing my love, it's tempered, it's measured, it fits the other person, it's compassionate, and not just about me overexposing myself, which would be too much chesed, or I don't say anything because I have too much gvura. All of these emotions, let's get back to what I was talking about before, how all these are interconnected. The interplay between all of these seven is what makes a healthy person. Too much of any of these things would be an imbalance in creation as well as in our own experience, which explains, for example, Medrash, which says that first God created the world with, I don't remember which one was first. I think first was kindness, and then strength, and then it didn't work out, so he combined the two and created compassion. So the Medrash makes it sound like it's literally in time why God first created the world this way and then changed it to that way. But more properly understood, it's saying that conceptually speaking, creation is first giving, and then there's withholding, and then combining the giving and withholding, we can then make a tempered amount of measured divine energy so that it can eventually be projected through Malchus, through divine sovereignty, into reality. Now, in terms of my service for Hashem, what does Malchus mean? To understand that, here's the other element of Malchus. So whereas sovereignty, Malchus, is at the bottom of the chain, because all it is projection. On the other hand, it's rooted deepest in the divine as well as in my personal experience. So to explain, why should I even want to manifest? Where does that come from? I have an ability to manifest, that's Malchus. But where does that come from? Why should I ever want to manifest? And the answer to why I want to manifest is because I am. Because I exist, therefore I manifest. It's almost biologically true too. Like from an evolutionary biological perspective, I think I'm pronouncing that right. The reason why we want to procreate is because we exist. Simply because I exist, therefore I want to project. So the fact that I am projecting is in essence rooted in the deepest me, I am. Whereas all the emotions we've talked about till now were generated and created by ideas. This is something worthy of my attraction. This is something worthy of my fear. This is something worthy of my compassion. These were all ideas. Projection comes from not an idea, but because I am. Because I exist, therefore I want to project. What I'm going to project, the mind will take care of that. So the mind and the emotions which decide what to project, are we projecting kindness? Are we projecting fear? Are we projecting compassion? Whatever it is we're projecting, that's all decided by the mind and the middle emotions. But the fact that I am, which begins before any of my ideas, is expressed in the fact that I project at the very end. In Kabbalah, this is known as the circle, that's the igulim, the circles that encircle the line. The line in the middle is the intelligence that formulates what's a good thing and what's not a good thing, what's worthy of my attention, what's not worthy of my attention, and then the emotions that actually play out the results of that intellectual exercise. The circle is, I am, therefore I project. I am, therefore I project. That's the circle. Keser, the crown, the I am, leads to Malchus, the projection, therefore I give, because I exist, because I am. In terms of my service of Hashem, what this really means is that not I serve God because I figured he's an amazing thing, therefore I love him so much, or I've seen his greatness and therefore I retreat in fear, or I see his grandeur and therefore I'm in awe of its beauty, or all these other reasons to serve Hashem. The reason for serving God on the Malchus level is because I am a Jew and God exists, therefore I do what he wants, period. So whereas on the surface, it seems like the lowest level because it lacks color, it lacks a feeling, it lacks an emotion. But deeply rooted in my existential self, it's the deepest expression of me. I am, therefore I'm doing. I feel, I understand, I don't understand, we'll deal with that later. But I know I am Jewish, therefore I am going to do what God wants in a manifest way. And then you can kind of fill the middle between the I am Jewish to I'm manifesting Jewish behavior. You can fill the middle with all kinds of ideas of how amazing God's greatness, how great God is, and therefore it's worthy of my attraction, it's worthy of my awe, and all the other different emotions that we've gone through. Now this explains what it says in Chassidus many times, that the lowest level of serving Hashem, which is a sense of dry duty without any color or emotion, is rooted in the deepest service of Hashem, which is, I do it because God exists. The highest form of service of Hashem, where it's not about me at all, I'm serving God just simply because God exists, is in a way connected to the lowest level of serving Hashem, where a person just says, I'm doing it because I have to. Because in both of those experiences, it's not about the way I feel or what kind of ideas I've conjured up and come to the conclusion about God, but rather about the simple fact that God exists and therefore I'm doing what he asks. So there we have the 7 emotions in their total. So if you wanted to encapsulate into one go, it's a person comes with the idea. The idea is either this is attractive or this is something to move away from, which becomes the emotions of love or fear. That's my experience of it, which then become netzach and hoid, enduring movement towards it or retreat away from it. And there's the combination in the middle line of these two things, which we would call compassion or empathy. And then finally, it becomes projected outward through malchus in some manifest behavior or some manifest speech. I hope that was clear. If you have any questions, I'm going to unmute everybody. I'm not going to do it all at once, but you're welcome to ask your question with the remaining time that we have.
Thank you, Rabbi Levi.
My pleasure. Oh, you're unmuted already.
Thank you. That was good. That was good.
You're welcome. Tomorrow night, 8:30, I'm going to be, I guess I'll be on here as well and on MTC Facebook doing Haggadah Insights. And if you have some ideas for Tuesday night, be more than happy to do something.
Koyach Levi.
Have a good night.
My pleasure. Good night. Stay safe, everybody.
All the best to everybody.
Nice, good bench, everyone, and stay safe.
I actually
Take
wanted
care.
to mention earlier that this year is the Lirfua Shlema of